What would you do if your HOA told you to tear down the front porch where your family sat every summer evening? Sipping lemonade and waving at neighbors? Imagine opening a letter stamped non-compliant structure. Remove in 30 days and realizing they were talking about the very steps where your kids took first day of school photos. Where your wife hung Christmas garland. Where your father-in-law once strummed his guitar. My name's Jack Miller. I'm 57. A retired postal worker. And I've lived in Willow Creek Estates for over 20 years. Out front of our house sits the porch I built with my own 2 hands in the spring of 2003. It's nothing fancy, just sturdy pine boards. A railing. And a swing where my wife, Nancy, and I sit most nights. That porch has held birthday cakes, sparklers on the 4th of July, and more conversations than I can count. And according to our HOA president, Karen, it's a blight on neighborhood aesthetics. Willow Creek used to be about community. When we moved in, folks greeted each other with pies and handshakes. The HOA collected dues to keep the pool open and the entrance sign painted. Nobody cared if your shutters were navy or your grass grew half an inch too long. Then Karen showed up. She came with a binder thicker than a phone book and a smile sharp enough to cut glass. Within a year, she was HOA president. And suddenly, Willow Creek wasn't about neighbors anymore, it was about uniformity. Karen rolled out new standards, only 3 approved paint colors. Matching mailboxes. No holiday decorations outside of December 1st to January 5th. And then she set her sights on porches. Her rule, all porches must be brick. Built by HOA-approved contractors. So when I opened that letter, stapled right to my porch railing, my blood boiled. Violation, notice structure, non-approved wooden porch, directive remove or replace within 30 days. Penalty, $200 per day if not compliant. $200 a day. For sitting on the swing where my wife and I had rocked grandbabies to sleep. At the next HOA meeting, I stood tall with photos me. In 2003, hammering the boards. Nancy, stringing Christmas lights. My kids sprawled out with popsicles on a hot July night. This porch isn't a violation. I told the room. It's part of my home. Part of my family. It's safe. It's solid. And it's been here long before your new rule. Karen didn't flinch. Mr. Miller. While we appreciate your nostalgia, rules protect property values. Your porch is inconsistent. It must go. Inconsistent, I shot back. This porch has been here 20 years. It's more consistent than your bylaws. Her lips curled, and she banged the gavel. Decision final. The fines came fast. Week 1, porch violation, jeden. 400 acrued. Week 2, swing chain, not regulation. Week 3, unapproved holiday lighting. It wasn't enforcement. It was harassment. So, I bought a binder. Slid every notice inside. And scrawled across the front in black marker, porch defense. Exhibit A. Nancy shook her head. Setting down a mug of coffee. You're turning into a lawyer. No. I said, I'm turning into a wall she won't knock down. And then neighbors started knocking. The Parkers showed me a violation for their white picket fence. Mrs. Davis clutched a notice about her garden bench. Even old Mr. Thompson had a fine for non-uniform mailbox height. That night, folks gathered on my porch. Lanterns swayed above us. Kids dangled their legs from the steps. And neighbors clutched their letters like battle flags. They can't bully us all. I said. Voice, steady. Not if we stand together. Earl, my next-door neighbor, raised his beer. Then, let's stand. Right here, on this porch. And just like that, beneath the swing Karen wanted gone, the fight for Willow Creek began. That night on my porch, with lantern light flickering across everyone's faces, I realized something. Karen might have the gavel, but we had the numbers. My porch had turned into more than just wood and nails. It was a rally point. The very next morning, I sat down at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a pot of coffee strong enough to melt paint. By lunchtime, I had a draft. We, the homeowners of Willow Creek Estates, call for the recall of HOA President Karen Wilkins for abuse of authority, or selective enforcement and harassment of residents. Nancy read it over my shoulder. Simple, clear, and sharp. Karen's gonna lose her mind. That's the idea, I said, and stapled it to a clipboard. The first signature came from Earl. He scrawled his name so big it nearly spilled off the page. She fined me $50 for having too many flower pots. Flower pots. Jack, count me in. Mrs. Davis signed next. She wrote me up for a bench under my maple tree. Said it wasn't HOA-approved furniture. That bench was my husband's gift before he passed. She's not touching it. By the end of the day, I had a dozen names. By the end of the week, 30. Word spread like a summer storm fast. Loud. And impossible to ignore. Karen. Of course. I noticed. Within days, neighbors found fresh violations stuffed into their mailboxes. The Parker's fence paint not uniform shade. The Lopez family, unauthorized basketball hoop. Old Mr. Thompson mailbox angle inconsistent with community standards. And me. 3 fines in 1 envelope. Porch swing improperly fastened. Holiday wreath displayed out of season. Improper placement of recycling bin. I slid each one into the binder and labeled a new tab in red marker retaliation. That binder was starting to feel like a weapon. But here's the thing. Instead of scaring people, Karen just pushed them closer together. At the grocery store, folks cornered me by the bread aisle, whispering, "Got the petition with you?" At church, hands tugged at my sleeve. "Let me sign." Jack. At the diner, a waitress dropped off pie and slipped me a folded violation notice. "My folks live here too. Make sure she's out." By mid-month, we had 70 signatures, well past the majority needed for a recall. So we held another meeting. Not at the sterile community center Karen loved, but right on my porch. The swing creaked as neighbors packed the steps. The yard. Even the sidewalk. Kids played tag in the grass while adults leaned close, buzzing with energy. I raised the clipboard high. Karen thought she could break us with fines and fear. But look at this 70 neighbors saying no more. This porch stays. Your gardens stay. Your benches. Your fences. In your swings, they all stay. And, come recall day, Karen goes. The cheer that followed nearly rattled the porch boards. Evelyn banged her cane against the steps like a drumbeat. Earl hollered to the porch, and the whole crowd laughed and roared with him. For the first time in months, Willow Creek felt alive again. But in the pit of my stomach, I knew the truth. Karen wasn't finished. A woman like her never just walks away. And sure enough, she was already sharpening her claws. Karen struck back exactly the way I expected, loud, glossy, and mean. The next week, every single mailbox in Willow Creek got stuffed with a flyer. On the front was a stock photo of a picture-perfect neighborhood brick porches, manicured lawns, and families smiling like toothpaste ads. Across the top, in bold red letters, Keep Willow Creek beautiful. Vote stability. Vote Karen. The back was worse. She accused agitators of spreading lies, lowering property values, and tearing the community apart. And in the middle of it all, in bold type, sat my name, Jack Miller. Nancy read it at the table, rolled her eyes, and said, "Congratulations. Honey, you're officially the villain in her fairy tale." I slipped the flyer into the binder, marked a new tab, propaganda. My gut twisted, but I smiled. If she's calling me out by name, she's scared. The scare tactics didn't stop there. Neighbors began receiving safety reports left on their doorsteps in unmarked envelopes. Inside were grainy photos clearly taken at night lawns, porches, even backyards. Captions underneath read things like clutter hazard, non-compliant structure, and potential liability. Is venture. Mrs. Davis came to me shaking. She stood in my yard with a camera. "Jack, that's not enforcement. That's stalking." I clenched my fists under the oak of my porch swing. Karen thought shadows and snapshots would scare us back into line. She didn't understand that fear had already snapped in this neighborhood. Then came the fines. Like machine gun fire? The Parkers' unapproved flower pot arrangements. The Lopez family basketball hoop violation. Repeat offense. Mr. Thompson mailbox support leaning at unsafe angle. And me. 4 violations in 2 days. Porch swing chain rusty. Excessive potted plants. Unapproved seasonal lighting. Wooden railing in poor aesthetic conformity. I slid each into the binder. Labeled in thick black ink, harassment. That binder was getting heavy enough to be a weapon. But here's the thing. Karen miscalculated every dirty trick, just poured gasoline on the fire. At church, Earl stood up in the middle of service, waved a violation notice in the air, and said, "If Karen thinks my grill is the biggest problem in Willow Creek, then maybe she needs new glasses." The whole congregation burst into laughter and applause. At the diner, a waitress pinned one of Karen's flyers to the bulletin board with a sticky note that read, "Comedy section." The tide had turned. Instead of cowering, people were emboldened. By the end of the month, the petition was certified. The recall election was set. We gathered again on my porch that night. Lanterns glowed. The swing creaked as kids piled onto it, and the crowd spilled out into the yard. I raised my binder high. Karen's thrown fines, flyers, and fear at us. But we're still here, and when recall day comes, we'll remind her whose neighborhood this is. The cheer that followed nearly lifted the shingles off the roof. Evelyn banged her cane against the steps, chanting, "Our porch, our rules," and soon half the crowd picked it up, until it rolled like thunder down the block. I looked at their faces, glowing in lantern light, and felt it, deep down, Karen's reign was ending. But I also knew she wouldn't go down without one last vicious swing. The day of the recall election felt like Judgment Day in Willow Creek. You could feel it in the air. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in years were suddenly shoulder to shoulder, walking toward the community center with ballots in hand. Some looked nervous. Some looked defiant. But everyone knew this was bigger than mailboxes and porch swings. This was about taking our neighborhood back. Inside, folding chairs lined the room. At the front sat the ballot box, plain and heavy, guarded by volunteers we trusted. You could hear the shuffle of papers, the scratch of pens. Every slip that dropped into that box made a hollow thunk that carried across the silence. And there she was, Karen, sitting tall in a blood-red blazer, gavel resting on the table like she still ran the place. Her smile was thin. This stretched, but her eyes kept darting across the crowd, counting, calculating. She knew the numbers weren't on her side. When it was my turn, I walked to the box with my ballot. Karen's gaze locked onto me, sharp as glass. I folded the paper slow, dropped it in, and the sound echoed like a hammer hitting wood. As I passed, Earl leaned over and whispered. Sounded like justice. The votes were tallied in the corner while the room sat frozen. Susan gripped my hand so tight it hurt. Evelyn leaned forward, Kane tapping on the tile with every heartbeat. Finally, Carla stood with the results in hand. She cleared her throat. Votes for recall 94. Votes against 21. For half a second, silence. Then the room erupted. Cheers. Claps. Stomping feet. Evelyn burst into tears. Earl threw his hat in the air. Mrs. Davis shouted. The porch stays and the whole room laughed and cheered with her. But Karen wasn't about to slink away. She slammed her gavel on the table so hard it cracked. This election is invalid, she screamed over the celebration. You're all destroying the integrity of Willow Creek. You'll regret this. Nobody listened. The roar of relief drowned her out. She stood, face red as fire, and hissed. This isn't over. Then she stormed out, heels snapping like gunshots on the linoleum. The door slammed behind her. And just like that, her reign was done. That evening, we gathered on my porch, lanterns swaying in the autumn breeze. Kids sprawled on the steps with cups of cider. Neighbors hugged, and laughter rolled through the yard. Earl raised his thermos high. Here's to Jack's porch, the place that brought down the queen. The cheer that followed shook the night. For the first time in years, Willow Creek felt alive again. But I couldn't shake the feeling in my gut. Karen wasn't the type to vanish. She was the type to plot. And sure enough, before long, she'd prove me right. For a week after the recall, Willow Creek breathed like a freed prisoner. Neighbors decorated again, pumpkins on porches, wreaths on doors. Evelyn hung her wind chimes back up with a grin that could have lit the street. Kids dragged basketball hoops to driveways without worrying about a citation. But peace didn't last long. Karen wasn't built to walk away. She was built to claw back. The first strike came in a thick envelope delivered by a deputy. Mr. Miller, he said, almost apologetically. You've been served. Inside a lawsuit, Karen accused me of defamation, harassment, even intentional emotional harm. She claimed I had orchestrated a smear campaign and demanded not just damages, but also, of course, the demolition of my porch. Nancy read it twice and tossed it on the table. She calls you a harasser. You should sue her for wasting paper. Still, seeing my name in legal print twisted my stomach into knots. I called my buddy Dave, a lawyer. He skimmed the packet, snorted, and said, "This is a slap suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation. Judges toss these out faster than junk mail." He was right. At the hearing, the judge dismissed it in under 15 minutes. Karen stormed out, heels clicking like gunfire, but not before burning me with a glare that could have set wood aflame. Then came the second strike, sneakier, nastier. One night, around midnight, our motion light snapped on. The security camera caught two hooded figures creeping onto my porch. One carried a crowbar, the other a cordless saw. They started hacking at the railing before bolting when the light flared. Earl's deer cam down the block caught the license plate. Turned out, The truck belonged to a landscaping crew Karen had used for compliance inspections. The sheriff filed charges for attempted vandalism. Karen denied everything. Nobody in Willow Creek believed her. But the biggest blow came when the new board dug into the books. Tens of thousands of dollars had been drained from HOA funds. Consulting fees to companies owned by Karen's cousin. Legal retainers with no lawyer attached. Even HOA credit card charges from luxury boutiques. At the next meeting, Carla projected the numbers on a screen. Gasps rippled through the crowd. She fined me for a bird feeder, Evelyn cried, while she bought handbags with our money. Carla's voice didn't waver. This has been forwarded to the county prosecutor. The cheer that followed rattled the walls. But Karen wasn't finished. The night before Thanksgiving, Earl came pounding on my door, face pale. In a love the might brang. Jack, get outside. Now. We ran to the retention pond. The chain on the drainage gate had been cut clean through. Water gushed out faster than it should, threatening to flood the lower lots, including mine. Deputy Collins shook his head at the damage. This wasn't an accident. Somebody wanted to cause real harm. Nancy grabbed my arm. She'd flood homes just to get back at you. I stared at my porch glowing under the moonlight and clenched my fists. She's desperate. I said, and desperate people are dangerous. But here's the thing. Karen didn't see. Desperate moves don't break communities. They forge them. She thought lawsuits, thugs, and sabotage would weaken us. Instead, she just made Willow Creek stronger. And like my porch, we weren't going anywhere. December came with frost on the lawns and Christmas lights twinkling from rooftops. But in Willow Creek, the brightest glow came from my porch. After the drainage sabotage, everyone understood something. Karen wasn't just after my boards and swing, she was after all of us. And the only way to beat someone like that was together. Carla, now acting HOA chair, called for a special gathering. Not in the community center. Karen had once ruled like a throne room. No. This time, it was right on my porch. We strung lanterns along the railing, set out folding chairs in the yard, and passed around thermoses of hot cider. Kids dangled their legs from the steps, laughing. My profession, the swing creaked under the weight of two neighbors squeezed together. My porch, the violation Karen tried to erase, had become the neighborhood's heartbeat. Carla stood tall at the top step. Voice steady. This porch isn't just Jack's. It's ours. It's where we stood against intimidation. Where we said enough. Tonight, I move that we officially recognize it as a Willow Creek landmark of community spirit. The cheer nearly lifted the roof. Evelyn banged her cane against the step like a drum. Earl hollered, "Long live the porch," and the whole crowd laughed. But their eyes glistened. From that night, the HOA changed. Instead of mailing fines, the board launched the Neighbor Care Fund. Dues went toward fixing fences, repairing roofs, even buying new playground swings for the kids. Instead of banning things, they celebrated them. Evelyn's wind chimes were listed as a heritage feature. The Parker's picket fence was officially preserved. Earl's too many flower pots declared a community garden. The very quirks Karen hated became the identity of Willow Creek. And people outside noticed. Letters poured in from all over. One from Colorado. Our HOA told us to cut down my dad's shed. Your fight gave us courage to stand. A family in Tennessee. They banned our vegetable garden. We started a petition after hearing about your porch. Even a group in Florida mailed us a picture of their cul-de-sac holding signs that read, "We stand with Willow Creek." One night, I sat at the table reading them out loud while Nancy brewed tea. She leaned over, smiling soft. "Jack, Your porch turned into a lighthouse. I swallowed hard. She was right. So the board organized the first annual porch walk. Neighbors decorated porches with lanterns, wreaths, and hand-painted signs. Some put out hot cocoa stands. Others strung Christmas lights in every color. Families strolled from porch to porch. Kids sipping cider. Laughter rolling down the streets. And at the end of the walk, my porch, lanterns swayed. The swing glowed under twinkle lights. And neighbors gathered in the cold, mugs steaming in their hands. Carla held up the bronze plaque the board had bolted to my railing. The Miller porch, built 2003, preserved as a symbol of community spirit. The crowd cheered so loud the swing rattled. Evelyn cried into her scarf. Earl slapped my back so hard I nearly spilled my cocoa. I stepped back, looking at it all. My porch boards were scarred and weathered from years of rain, boots, and birthday parties. But standing there, glowing with lanterns and surrounded by neighbors, I realized this porch wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to Willow Creek. Karen wanted it gone. Instead, she made it eternal by the start of the new year. Willow Creek's porch story wasn't just ours anymore. It belonged to half the country. It started with the local paper, The Porch That Wouldn't Fall. Then a television crew came out, setting up cameras right in front of the swing Karen had once called non-compliant. I stood there, bundled in my old flannel, neighbors flanking me, and told the story straight about the fines, the threats, the recall, and how a wooden porch had become the place where we all stood together. The clip hit the evening news. By the next morning, it was everywhere. Online headlines read HOA tyrant taken down by a porch. And then the letters came. A man in Ohio wrote our HOA ordered us to rip out the deck my father built. We thought we had no chance until we read about Willow Creek. A woman in Arizona. They fined us for a grapevine trellis. Your porch gave us the courage to fight. An entire neighborhood in Texas sent a photo of their cul-de-sac gathered on someone's front steps, holding a banner, Stand Like Willow Creek. One evening, Nancy and I sat at the kitchen table, reading them aloud. She smiled, tears shining in her eyes. Jack, you thought you built a porch. Turns out you built a beacon. The invitations came next. A community 2 towns over asked me to speak. The HOA had banned porch swings, said they were dangerous eyesores. Folks were fed up but scared stiff. I drove over, binder under my arm, and told them our story. Showed them the stack of violation letters Karen had showered us with. They can throw paper. They can shout rules. I said, but they can't tear down what you refuse to surrender if you stand together. By the end of the night, they voted to recall their entire board. Driving home, Earl slapped the dashboard and laughed. Never thought I'd see the day a porch swing started a movement. Back in Willow Creek, life bloomed. The new board started the Heritage Trail, a map marking every violation Karen had once cited. Evelyn's wind chimes, Mr. Thompson's old mailbox, the Parker's fence, even the Lopez family's basketball hoop. Kids turned it into a scavenger hunt, racing from one landmark to the next, learning the stories behind them. And right at the center, the crown jewel, my porch. A bronze plaque on the railing read, The Miller Porch, built 2003. Preserved by the people of Willow Creek. Neighbors touched it like it was sacred. That summer, we held the first porch festival. Every home decked out their porches with ribbons, flowers, lanterns, even live music. Folks walked the streets sipping lemonade. Kids painted little wooden porch cutouts. and grills smoked on every block. When the sun dipped, everyone gathered on mine. Lanterns swayed in the warm breeze. The swing creaked gently. Kids sprawled across the steps with cotton candy. Carla took the mic and said, "This porch was almost destroyed by one person's hunger for control. Instead, it became the symbol of a neighborhood finding its voice. Let it remind us all, home isn't about rules, it's about roots." The cheer that rolled out of the crowd was deafening, and the moment that left me speechless. A family from across the country, Illinois, drove all day just to see the porch. Their little girl touched the railing gently and whispered, "Daddy, is this the porch that beat the bad lady?" My throat closed. Yes, it was my porch. Weathered and scarred, had become something I never imagined, a monument to defiance. A banner of hope. Karen tried to tear it down. Instead, she built it into legend. By autumn, Willow Creek felt like a different world. The fear that once crept into every mailbox was gone. Instead, porches brimmed with laughter, flower pots, wind chimes, and holiday lights hung proudly year-round. For the first time in years, neighbors weren't glancing over their shoulders for citations, they were waving at each other again. Karen was long gone. She sold her house quietly, slipping out under cover of night. No goodbye. No farewell. Just a for sale sign that disappeared as quickly as she had. And while her shadow had loomed large for years, it was gone, now swept away by the sound of kids laughing on steps and the creak of porch swings swaying in the evening breeze. The county eventually recognized what we all already knew. On a crisp October afternoon, officials gathered at my porch to unveil a plaque bolted into the railing. The Miller Porch, built 2003, preserved as a landmark of community spirit. Neighbors clapped, cheered. Some even cried. Evelyn kissed the plaque with a laugh. Earl hollered, "About time," and the whole crowd burst out laughing. Nancy leaned against me, eyes shining. "Jack," she whispered, "you didn't just save a porch. You saved a neighborhood." That night, lanterns swayed from every porch on the block. Music floated through the air. Kids ran laughing from house to house, and folks lingered on their steps, swapping stories. For the first time in a long time, Willow Creek wasn't just a neighborhood, it was a family. I sat on my swing, listening to the boards creak beneath me, binder still resting on the table, but it didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like a trophy. Nancy curled up beside me, sipping cider. "Funny," she said. She thought this porch was the problem. Turns out, it was the cure. I smiled, running my hand along the railing. The wood was scarred and weathered, but strong as ever. Karen tried to erase it. Instead, she made it eternal. And here's the truth I've carried since. There will always be Karen's people who hide behind bylaws and wield power like a weapon. But there will also always be porches, places built with love, soaked in memories, strong enough to hold a community. So, when the notice shows up in your mailbox, when someone tells you to tear down what matters most, what will you do? Fold or fight? Me, I fought. And every creak of this swing, every laugh echoing from the steps, every lantern glowing against the night whispers the same answer. Stand.